any side effect. That's going to kill me now, isn't it? Didn't have any side effect to the jab as well, so I'm perfect.
I was going to ask you if you're feeling okay after having your jab.
To the degree that I was and now I've started getting all paranoid. Did I actually have it or not? Oh, hello, we're live. You sneaky git, you've taken us live.
Well, I wanted the members of the public to hear firsthand how President Whale took his AstraZeneca vac.
I know, yeah, there's been a lot of attention, obviously, this weekend over, important people. And yes, I am okay. The jab was delivered with beautiful efficacy. And yeah, I was getting all panicky because I was ready to lie down for 3 days and really, get the man flu thing going. But I haven't felt a thing.
Well, that's okay. It's only a little prick, I've heard.
Well, yeah, and I'm used to that. Is that your line? Also, now they've hit our demographic of the under 30s. We're a much tougher breed anyway.
It's been a long time since you've seen the under 30s.
30 stone, I think, was the demographic there I was targeting. Anyway, mate, how was your first? Is this your? I should know this. Was this your first full week in kerfuffle?
It was, yeah. So we've done a fair bit of kerfuffling this week, producing some, I'd like to think, decent content, but I think helpful content as well. So we're having some fun with some, Simon Whale always says this about me. I've never had an original thought in my life, but the stuff that I rip off other people, I do really well.
Yeah, you've got that going. I love your, some of your really punchy, angles, looking for really quick silver bullets, especially from suppliers and things. And I know you've got a lot in there. You've got the first ones out this week, but some of those ones coming through, exactly what people are looking for.
Yeah, it's just right now, I don't think anybody's got time to listen to an hour-long webinar, as much as that would be fun. So we're just trying to sort of shrink down the content, give them the bits that will add value and will help them, and let everybody get on with it. They're all absolutely rammed.
Did you see that little? There was Tom on one of the Facebook groups, I think it was yesterday, just talking about, and Alex King were talking about, just as they do on many of these groups, asking about Akaboom, and so I threw my 2 penneth with. And what was really interesting, Alex was talking about, he says, "Look, I just don't have time, energy to sit through another hour demonstration," which shows he's probably heard of Susanna's demonstrations. But what I thought was really interesting is that is absolutely true, isn't it? And I sent him over a recording of our webinar where she actually flew and demonstrated it. And he was like, "Oh God, it's still almost whatever it was, 40 minutes long." And it really does show that people really look. There's a time and place. You've got to have a demo when you're in close mode, haven't you? But actually, to have a précis summary of suppliers before you're in that closure chain, it's just like classic nurturing for agents and vendors, isn't it? Really,
and you did what you should do, but you did it very well. You sort of said, "Look, here's a link to something we've already recorded. If you want, you can skip through the bits you don't want to listen to." And I think that gives people control over the process. But it comes down to giving people an elevator pitch, really, doesn't it? So that whole classic, you've only got 30 seconds with somebody. How do you convey to them what you do? But more importantly, if you're a supplier, how you add value to that agent. And I think that at the moment, it must be a very tough time for supplier reps to get in and see agents. They are busy. They have 1,000,001 things to do. They're not necessarily interested in carving an hour out of their day, which, let's face it, if they don't buy your product, it's a very expensive hour. If they do buy your product, it's an even more expensive hour that they're gonna have to pay back at some point. So these are the things that all reps, I think, need to be considering. And Susanna did it very well yesterday. She said, "Look, you don't need a long, you won't need a long intro to this. We can make it as quick and as painless as you want."
Which is always how you want to go into a session. It is the one thing that's the most dangerous. And look, we're not expecting any crocodile tears here for suppliers or for Proptech or anything like that. But the only thing that's more difficult for suppliers on that side of the equation is obviously when there's been a complete crash. But actually, the next worst thing is when agents are busy as they are at the moment, because there is a certain degree of agent ostrich thing going on where, look, we've got to make hay while the sun shines. Stock is, look, I'm not distracting anything from, unless it's going to generate stock for me. And so they're not taking their eyes off the business. But you always have to at some stage if you're really going to get those efficiencies into the business, aren't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's the whole battle, isn't it, of working in the business and working on the business. But you'd argue that right now this is peak sort of over the trenches time, and just it must be a very tough month. But that's going to disappear again, and you will have more time, unfortunately, to spend on stuff in July and August possibly.
So I saw you having a bit of a online discussion with Henry Pryor, who has very much been making the angle that in a few weeks' time the stock will start to bounce back and everything else. You're not just waiting for that to happen. As I said, you've actually got some stock busting style solutions and things like that coming online with content. But where do you think the whole content scarcity is going to go over if you were having to make a prediction, which I am asking?
Ooh, I actually think that the wave of positivity at the end of June, despite the stamp duty going away, and the good weather will hopefully take us over the summer months. But as you head back to school in September, that is going to be a real crunch time for agents, because the weather's going to turn shit. People's mood will turn shit. All the holidays that people have banked up and have taken now over the summer holidays, that's gone. They've got nothing to look forward to. And we'll probably have, sorry, Boris, but I'm right, we're going to have a little bit of a wave of corona. So it's going to feel like that there will be headlines again about that coming back, because it's the winter. You're bound to have a bit more flu. So
never mind that. Have you seen Soho? If the R rate hasn't hit 30 this week, I'll be amazed.
No, we'll look at, I think there's nothing you can do to stop that from happening. It is going to happen, and it's going to be an area of our lives we're just going to have to manage. Yeah. And you'd argue that now that pretty much everyone is getting the jab, we should be relatively protected. So you won't see massive rising cases of hospitalization, I would hope. But I think chickens are going to have to come home to roost at some point. You have got the...
What are you talking about? You're talking about bird flu?
Yes, yes, everybody. Just, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
No,
we called Corona earlier before anyone else. Why not call this? If we just predict a pandemic every year, we don't have to raise it unless it happens, do we? We'll be seen as this.
We're just hedging our bets on global meltdown. But I think there is an economic bill that needs paying that we're not talking about, and there are many jobs that will be at risk.
No, our kids can pay that off. Come on, let them.
I would love for those scenes that you see in Soho, and this is my only plea to all of those people going out there and drinking and having fun and getting their fill at the moment. It is fantastic that you are out there supporting your local pubs. Yeah. There are countless other local businesses that need your money, and you should be approaching them with the same gusto, and you should be handing over that money there as well. There are many. That high street needs a jump start. It's something that I discussed with Christian Byfield, because he keeps an eye on how things are in Shoreditch in terms of people coming back to work and all that sort of stuff. And it's going to be a slower start than we think.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Jerry, I wasn't going to... he did a fantastic content piece, as Jerry always does this week, didn't he? But around that Act Local, that local campaign. Have you seen that? I'm sure I've seen you commenting about what you should be doing in terms of your local community.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff out there. I think Jerry is putting some stuff out on how to support your local community. And there's some really great ways that agents, and can get visibility, get engagement, be seen to be supporting their local community and actually supporting it all at the same time. But if you are to go down to your local high streets and just spend half an hour doing some filming outside local businesses, explaining what their new opening hours are, how long their waiting list is, for instance, if they've got one, and the services that they provide, you're going to be seen as boosting your local economy, but you're also putting yourself front and center once again with what is happening in your community. So these are things you could do with no trouble. Oliver's done a very basically the same thing that Jerry's recommending that people do here. It's like a 10-point checklist that people should undertake. It's dead simple things like, support your local businesses where you can, spend at least 10 quid a week in one of your local eateries. There's a whole load of points there.
Did you see that a local politician, a local councillor, had stolen it just shamelessly and done the full R&D, and literally within seconds of Jerry's agents putting it out there, they'd already knocked it out themselves. It's like, oh, I know it goes on, but it's still not.
Just look at that list there, and Jerry will agree with me. It's easily ripped off because it's so bloody simple. That is exactly, that's like an ABC of what you should be doing.
Anyone could do that. So spend 10 quid in your local independent shops, read the local paper, visit a local. These are all stuff that you can and should be doing anyway. And I love the idea of proceduralising. I won't go into too much because we're showing just a bit of the magic of what Jerry does. But get in touch on there. As you can see, it's the Estate Agent Content Club. I was a bit. I should have checked first because I didn't know which groups. Imagine if that was Dogging Didsbury had popped up as well.
So, talk to me about Dogging Didsbury. And are you getting a dog, or is that a different site?
Our neighbour has got a dog. The neighbour has just got a dog, so I'll distract you by going down that factual route rather than you trying to make it something that it's not.
Should we perhaps look at something a little bit more newsworthy than your neighbour's dog?
Do you want me to knock up something? Do you want to knock up something?
No, I love watching you knock them out.
Okay, here we go. Well, let's go for everyone's favourite. Let's go for a Foxtons story. So, this is the one. You may have seen it. They got a fair bit. They've had a bit of backlash this week in the news because famously, obviously, they were big recipients of furlough, like many businesses here. They've obviously bought Douglas and Gordon. The CEO's got a near £1 million bonus. They bought another business way back when. My question to you is, are we not just expecting too much of business?
Well, two things strike me as really strange about this story. Number one, it should come as no surprise to the Foxtons board that once you take public money and you are listed, you then are at the beck and call of shareholders. And if the shareholders vote one way, you've got to go with them. And if there is growing sentiment that you need to do something, ultimately that pressure will be brought to bear. And I don't care what they say, but that is pretty much a consistent phrase out of every Rightmove rep, out of their mouths, that when they're explaining Rightmove's strategy, they always have to throw into the mix, well, look, we're publicly owned, we're beholden to shareholders, and eventually On the Market came out with the same rhetoric as well, didn't they? But the other point about all of this is that Foxtons were never exactly perceived as your local cuddly, friendly estate agent. They absolutely built a business on the back of they were bloodthirsty sharks that were going to go out there to get business. They weren't looking to win hearts and minds. They looked good. They operated at a very high level. Their fees were not exactly competitive. They were very punchy. So you know what you're getting with Foxtons. And I don't believe that our industry thinks that Foxtons suddenly have turned lovely and nice and they're going to hand over all that money back to the government. So, no. and let's just state for the record, there is nothing wrong with not giving that money back. They're not breaking any rules. The question here is whether morally, because of the profits that they've made, they
You
should
hear
be forced.
this all the time, David, about taxes, don't you? And there's always the standard lines. We've operated absolutely to the letter of the law. And as I said, imagining that somebody's going to grow a big ethical backbone is it's fanciful, isn't it? That's for hippies like me to worry about, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, Christian makes a good point. One of their mantras were, "We go to war for our clients," and that's your estate agent, folks. Yeah. If you're not happy with the way that they operate, say so. But I believe ultimately the shareholders do have a big voice here, and clearly it's big enough to ruffle a few feathers and to make the news. So I wonder what will happen next.
Do you know I shamelessly nicked a bit back from Foxtons there. So they've got "We go to war for our clients." Kerfuffles is "We go to Weatherspoons with our clients." It's a much softer approach, isn't it?
I know what I'd rather do. Make Weatherspoons, not war people.
There you go. We'll have that. That's it. Nick that one again. So let's just deal on the second angle in this story then. That's jumping out at us in red. The £3 million investment in Booming I found particularly interesting as well, because I think probably, could be quite savvy depending on which part of the investment. Clearly, Kenny and Michael have made many investors lots of money over the years, but also the wrong side of it, you can get caught out. So it feels like Foxtons are getting in at the ground floor here. My question to you, just come with your agency hat on though, would this make the proposition of Booming more exciting to you to get involved with if you weren't already, with a company like that having an investment, or is it just broadly beautiful?
I have a view on, because I worked in London against agents like Foxtons. I had to defend my local marketplace, and then I went through a period of time where I was defending my local marketplace from Purple Bricks. Unfortunately, a bit of the feeling that I have for Foxtons is also occupies the same place that I have for the Bruce Brothers, and so in that respect, I feel that they, Foxtons are probably aligning their interests with a brand that they think is also going to aggressively take hold over a market, and they want to get on that train whilst it's moving. But let's be clear, the Bruce Brothers are being extremely clever about whose money they're taking and who they're courting. They are being extremely clever about who they're stuffing their board with, because they know that these names make headlines, and Foxtons, whether you like it or not, they might not be your favorite local go-to cuddly agent, but they are a big enough name to make other agents think, are we missing out? And that's the point here.
And that's definitely the one that's moving a few people, aren't they? If they're stuck in that position of not knowing what to do, that fear of missing out is very much playing a part now from the agents we're talking to, isn't it?
It's huge, and the whole of Booming's site is almost built on the fear of missing out. Buyers and sellers want to know first what's going on in the marketplace. But I think moving on to one of your next stories, I think the truth is what Booming intend to do, and we've always said this, at least we've always said this at Normie and Co. Whatever innovations Booming come up with, it would be incredibly easy for both Rightmove and Zoopla to replicate that within their own natural environments. And I believe that's what you're seeing Zoopla move towards this week.
So this is the one they challenged, talking about challenging Rightmove with their biggest changes, game-changing functionality. Now, did that deliver on that promise of the headline? Was the first thing I'd challenge you. I'd ask you.
I think that the headlines about Zoopla and Rightmove this week have been written by somebody that doesn't like to read between the lines. So I'm going to rephrase that. That headline there says, Zoopla challenges Rightmove with changes to features, functionality, and branding. I'm going to put it into terms that members of the public can understand more easily. Zoopla and Rightmove begin to shit their pants with the invent of Booming and their functionality, and I think that's what we're starting to see. This is let's be clear, this is not a reaction to anything that Rightmove is doing. It's not a reaction to anything Zoopla is doing. Both Rightmove and Zoopla are now forced to act because Booming has brought together these innovations, and they've realized where Booming have set their stall out in terms of the message they're going to the public with. And I think Zoopla and Rightmove are saying, look, we can do things differently as well. Rightmove have got some news this week, which we'll cover next. But I think that, I mean, I don't know, is the subtle change of colour and the logo enough to do it for you, Simon? Are you?
Let's say to be confirmed. I think it is interesting. I think one of the angles that we saw, obviously, when OTM launched, was that they were there trying to take down, in their eyes, they were trying to take down Rightmove, and clearly impacted, as it always does, on the challenger portal first. So it's unsurprising that you would see ZPG as let's just say the number 2, to be the first React to probably defend itself. Whereas Rightmove, we got Tom McGee on as usually. Hi, Tom, who makes that point. He's never heard a member of the public, of his clients, criticize Rightmove for being uninnovative. And that's the point. They love what they got. They love the spread of stock that's obviously on there and everything else. So to them, they're going to score that a 9 or a 10 out there. Yes, you've got some niche people that have always loved things like Find a Property or the maps searching facility of a Globrix. But what's the one you deviate back to with the numbers? The numbers talk, don't they?
I think they do, and Christian hits the nail on the head as always. It's all about the battle for the consumer. And the point is this: right now, Zoopla and Rightmove are not necessarily just trying to keep the agents happy. They need to keep the agents calm. And Zoopla, as number 2, are going to be susceptible to defectors over to Booming or other stuff like that. So people need to start moving. But it's also about convincing the public that you are offering them something that adds value. And what's interesting is they're all offering the public something that comes direct from the brand itself rather than via the agent. And again, these are all the criticisms that are coming out about Boomin. A lot of the conjecture that you see online is all about whether or not they're going to enable the client too much and cut out the agent. So I just wonder where we're headed with all of this. There seems to be a lot of innovation out there, and I think that innovation is being fueled by fear.
Are we going to do a Harry Hill fight?
Come on, let's have a scrap. But you know what they could start to fight with. With fees. I'm not sure agents would necessarily object to that if they made life easier and cheaper for agents. But I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon.
You're in wishful land, aren't you?
Yeah.
You just come through Narnia, the little cupboard there. So Tom makes the point. The biggest complaint we hear from the public about Rightmove is that half the stock isn't available, and ultimately that's down to the agents. So that's interesting that actually, even with Rightmove, that famously always used to have just over 90% of the market, that they are being criticised for that main point about the levels of stock on there. Now, if Rightmove as the biggest are getting that, what does that feeling of frustration feel like to the public with the other portals?
Yeah, absolutely. Have you seen that next comment from Christian? Let's put that up. Here we go. Christian says, what Rightmove have done right, although many of us moan about this, is it's an unapologetically clean property search site. Serious, sold, or dreaming. You hop on, pop a location in, and off you go. Other stuff gets us more, but might put consumers off. Oh God, I just want to look at my property. But that's true. That is true. We've got to look at it from the consumer's point of view. Do they want a funnel where they're being sold, curtains, blinds, and light fittings by Kenny Bruce, or do they actually just want to buy a house? I'd argue they want to buy a house.
Yeah. And Tom McGee's clearly been on the magic mushrooms early on a Sunday. That's loads of its satchel, but not shown as that. Thank you for those wide words, Tom.
Didn't Michael Jackson have a son called Satchel?
Oh no, he had bubbles.
Oh, sect. Oh, there we go.
Sect. I don't understand that. I mean, that's loads of its sect, but not shown as. Sorry,
he actually means sold subject to contract. I reckon there's loads on Rightmove that is under offer, and the public seem to just filter it out of their consciousness or drop it out their search altogether.
In the light of that insightful feedback, can I just say, woohoo, the pubs are open again. Thanks, Tom, showing your dedication there to local businesses, getting in at 10:44. Right, okay. What other stories should we have a look at? You got anything you want to talk about, or shall I? Can I jump into one of the quick?
Yeah, please.
Just one of the elements of that Foxtons. I know we're spending a lot of time on them again, but it was, and again, tying it back to booming, because I'll pretend this is all relevant. Now, I think these deals are really, really clever, where they do those kind of Showtime swaps, don't they, for advertising, and an equity Showtime kind of swap. Very, very clever. Get the TV advertising, which is needed for these ones there. Don't know how. I don't think it shows any level of what the actual level of equity is. So the question is, first of all, do you agree with that? Do you think that's quite a canny part? Also, secondly, isn't Channel 4 publicly owned, essentially?
On all these big companies, one way or another, publicly owned. But what does that mean? It's not owned by a taxpayer, though, is it? It's owned by...
I thought the government. I thought it was at some level. Isn't there some sort of government ownership over Channel 4?
Well, I think there's some sort of level of government ownership over the BBC, but we don't have much. We still have to pay for it, and we still don't have say in what it does.
Yeah, but my point on that was that a few people kicked off that they're saying that was the case, and that they disagreed that taxpayer dollars or pounds or whatever we're on the euro were being spent on a company like this. Now, yeah, okay. So thanks, Louisa. Yeah, absolutely great point. So the point was, if money had been changing hands, then that would have become a much bigger public issue, wouldn't it? Whereas actually, if it is just an equity Showtime advertising thing, that's a much easier one to validate, isn't it? Although it still raises questions.
The whole thing raises questions. When we see these headlines, just as when you see the headlines, do you remember a couple of months ago, the headlines that were dripped into the property press every couple of days was stuff like, another big name has signed up to Boomin, another 10 branches have signed up, another 20 have signed up. But none of us actually know what is the deal behind the scenes. So we don't know, for instance, what Channel 4 are getting out of Boomin and vice versa. Because, yes, you read a headline there, it says that Channel 4 are going to take a stake in Boomin, but what does that mean? There is a quid pro quo for all of this, and there is something that is going to be happening, and I believe actually it might lead to a little bit more property programming in terms of TV content.
David, let me switch to the emphasis slightly. Is there anything that can be done? Obviously, we're big fans of Mr. Watkins' digital mayor. Hyper-local is a phrase that gets bandied around. Is there any lessons here that smaller independent agents can take? Clearly, they're not going to get a deal with the Channel 4 or anything else like that. But are there media sources that they can try and strike up deals like this with in your locality? I don't know.
I think so. I think there are a load of small media companies in your locality. There are amateur sort of TV stations. There are also tons and tons and tons of podcasts. We now have more podcasts than we have people in the industry, I think.
Yeah, we're looking it up for everyone.
No, but actually, interesting statistic over lockdown is that everybody started a podcast. Some of them have been consistent with them and carried it through. There's lots of shows out there, but there's also lots of local interest stuff going on. So reach out to those people. They will be desperate for content.
Reach out. Pete and I'll
be there.
Pete and I guarantee now, is sending me on WhatsApp the Four Tops joke. The only permissible time to show the phrase "reach out" is if you're a member of the Four Tops.
Okay, we'll get in touch. Get in touch with your local, whoever it is, but get in touch. Also, local charities. One of my local charities has decided because they can't throw a fundraiser, they've taken, I think, an hour on one of these shopping channels. It costs them something like 500 quid to do it. They've then put together, and they're broadcasting, and they are getting everybody in the community to sort of tell people, tune in tonight at 9 o'clock, you're going to see something. And it's all about trying to capture people's attention, but there must be a load of local organizations, but also broadcasters, amateur broadcasters, and you can leverage that, and you can give them content, they can give you exposure.
But extending it out, you've been doing your brilliant local series. I think you were doing the bagel and pastry shop, and you were doing basically you go around all the places you like eating.
Yeah, mince gets fat for content.
So is there something there in a slightly different way though that, or would it be perceived as a conflict of interest? Not that seems to bother anyone these days. That when you were talking about, look, we'd love to do obviously an overview of your restaurant store, whatever else it is there. Would it be okay for us just to put our cards or our leaflets up in your brochure? Or is just the thought of is it the ideal? You're not going to get too many sort of leads from a kebab house at 2 a.m. in the morning from somebody thinking, you know what, Normie & Co. is the right option for me.
No, you know what, you might not, and some people are very skeptical. I have actually spoken to people and said, hey, look, very happy to do this for you, and they've said, no thanks, mate. I'd rather you not advertise your business off the back of mine. So some people see an attempt by an agent to produce local content as well. They get very cynical about it, don't they? They just say, look, at the end of the day, all you're trying to do is leverage local content, local interest to get you the exposure, and to a certain extent that is true, but also I've got to tell you, this stuff takes time, effort and energy, and it's not worth the time, effort and energy purely for the additional exposure. But if you do care about your community, it's really worth doing. That's the bottom line.
Thank you for that. We've got the wonderful Louisa here, property journalist. This is what serious journalists do here. As she said, she's actually given us don't hide it just as I start talking.
Oh, sorry. Oh.
Look at this. Now we got a conflict. Brilliant.
Right, I'm just going to sit this one out, mate. Okay.
So thank you, Louisa. She's actually just made the point there about the link there off to about the operating responsibility and everything for Channel 4. So have a click on that. So thank you very much for raising that to our attention. Mr. Byfield just makes the point there. A lot of countries have sovereign investment funds. Maybe the UK should. Or there would be just another vehicle to give Boris's mates more money. At least there's efficiency in the system. By the way, I think the time to do that was probably after North Sea oil, rather than giving it on cheap tax cuts. But
what is interesting about this Channel 4 Boomin tie-up is that Boomin are looking to be slightly edgy, and they're looking to capture that kind of younger audience. Now, Channel 4 struggled to do that. It did when it started out. Do you remember how Channel 4 used to be this rank outsider, and they used to release all the shows that nobody else would touch because you couldn't put them on BBC Two even, back in those days when we only had 4 channels. Channel 4 was the stuff where you could be guaranteed something a little bit edgy, a little bit challenging and racy. So maybe this actually is a really good tie-up.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's just jump over now to the other portal as well. So we have got OTM news this week as well. So let's have a look. So this is the one that I found really interesting as well. Obviously, Jason, the new CEO there, has just made I think quite a savvy investment in. And they have bought Glanty. Now, not many people will know Glanty per se as the brand, but they will certainly know Techlet, which is one of the subsidiary product lines underneath it. And it's just talking on it with a really interesting interview with Peter Knight, which is talking about how they are going to become a software house as well as a portal. Now, I think that is savvy, because clearly they've been they've got a challenging position just believing it in the portal point, haven't they? So to actually differentiate themselves and do something different, it does feel like that. This feels like a quite a canny play. If it's the right choice in terms of software, which I think that is quite clever. A lot of our clients talk very favourably about Techlet.
It is interesting, and can I tell you what else is interesting? I found it interesting that they got 90 to do the to do the interview. So I think next week Christopher Watkin is sitting down with somebody at Boomin. It must be Kenny or somebody like that. And 90 sat down now with this guy. And what's interesting is that they are choosing to be interviewed because they feel the need to explain themselves to the public a little bit more, because I think On the Market have got a lot of work to do on that, haven't they? But this tie-up is very interesting.
Did you see Jason's or On the Market's tweets out this week? Is we're not dodging the questions. I can't remember what the actual neat release was, but it was basically, we are going to answer all the tough questions. We're not ducking and diving. I know that 90 said Jason was really. I have a load of time for Jason. I'll stake my cards to the mast there, if that is even a phrase. And I think that's what's needed, isn't it? You genuinely, like Nathan, and I think that release is going to come out. He sat and did the interview with Chris Watkins. He did one with me. He was incredibly honest. He didn't try hiding behind anything. All he asked for was a bit of fairness in, don't judge me, completely.
And you know what? I think what we've seen is you did a whole show on trolling, didn't you? And basically what we were talking about was all the cynical voices that you see day in, day out on the comment section of the Property Industry Eye. It's hard to be cynical if you are being honest and you're there and you're offering that information to the public up front. So I applaud what they're doing. I think there needs to be more of this engagement with the public.
Well, I'm assuming I don't know the full background here, but Christian, again, was very impressed with Jason's hand-on management of our fraud agent. Just a tip, though, Christian, when you're talking about being fraudulent, don't put it on a big podcast, okay?
No, so Christian had a hell of a story. If I'm not mistaken, Christian can correct me.
Yeah, this was the one where somebody was essentially just copying his brand.
They effectively just cloned his brand and I don't know what it was they were out to get, but certainly Christian jumped into action on that very quickly.
Base without the Viking is meaningless anyway, isn't it? So you've either got that magic or you don't.
I mean, but how desperate must you be to launch something that you have to effectively go and pretend to be somebody else in order to? I mean, it's fraud in the most basic sense.
Yeah, but not for us copying TripAdvisor, Which Magazine, and Groupon. That's all fine.
And by the way, we will be seeing a lot more of Property Mastermind up until the BBC shuts us down. because we like that concept. Certainly loving the Agree or Disagree series at the moment. But I think that here we go. They got a whole lot of whoop-ass. Oh dear. Oh dear.
The legal phrase I recognise. Yeah, okay. Well, good. And that's, look, going back to what it was about, fantastic. I've always said, whether you like them or loathe them, Rightmove, the fact that you have got Miles Shipside there, who takes an absolutely hands-on view, has got on the phone many times to agents and will fight his corner, is what I want from a stakeholder, again, wanky phrase, but it's what I want from any of the senior people in the business. And those businesses that I are always going to throw rocks at are the ones that hide in the shadows and keep their heads down.
And I think if Miles is watching this, and if he's watched the interview that Peter Knight did with on the Market, and if he watches the interview that Watkins will do with Boomin, and let's be fair, Boomin are managing a situation by using that interview. So just like Nixon had something to get out of Frost, and Frost had something to get out of Nixon. They needed each other. And
that was wonderful, the competition there, wasn't it? But both sides thought, I can control the other. And in Frost Nixon, it was when it switched, didn't it, over the course of a variety of, if you like, rumbles that it
But I don't think you're going to see the same gear change with Watkins and Boomin. But I think what you will do, you'll see Boomin answering questions posed by the public. So Miles, if he's watching this, will actually have to also answer questions from the public, because the one thing that Rightmove haven't done, whether rightly or wrongly, is that over the past 18 months have stayed well clear of direct communication with its member base.
Well, you know my view on that, and I've told anyone who'll listen to there, not that they quite rightly should listen to me, but I just think it's such a mistake. I think there's a load that they could be getting across. The problem is they allow the vacuum to go on, and they have no right to respond, do they? And that is incredibly dangerous when that happens. Actually, let's talk about it again. We can say this; it was all public. When we were talking previously about, and I think John Paul was making the point with Property Mark about the huge amount of stuff that they do and everything else there, without just him being able to put his head above the parapet. And Nathan did say again, gave a couple of great examples in Chris's interview, certainly on my follow-up one, where he makes the specific points about it. But unless you come out and talk to the audience, and I appreciate, here's the thing, you can understand why, in B2C, you have to do it because consumers are many thousands of people, stroke millions. In our B2B world, it might only be a few hundred or dozens or the two we have on our podcast. But it's still your client base, isn't it? And so you can't choose to be arrogant enough to separate yourself out of it, can you?
And also, it's the world that we live in today. Getting a message out there is so simple via social media or anything else that you can no longer say that I don't engage or I don't answer direct inquiries or I don't talk to them. It's what we expect from our politicians. We expect it from our celebrities. We now expect it from people we do business with, that we're going to get frank and open dialogue. Not that you can achieve that easily with politicians, but look at today how politicians handle major fallouts. They have to get on camera and they need to answer those questions about that trip to Barnard Castle.
Yeah, there would be nothing more boring, though, than to start seeing it go down the politicians' route where they just need to get kind of...
I would love to see Miles Shipside on that. And a small part of me fell into him, and therefore, with the wife and the kids in the background, just like they used to do on...
Going back to, I see what you're doing now. You're going back to a very good
I'd love that sort of thing. I think we need to see a little bit more showmanship from these people. Come on. Life is boring.
Tom's looking forward to Rightmove's official stance on the satchel problem, which we've launched today. So, again, that's really important. They get on camera, but they definitely don't ask the questions. Well, here's the thing, Christian. On Newsnight, they only have 3 minutes. But me and David will sit back here for 4 hours and say, you're not getting off.
But, Christian, that's why they've got Nighty and they've got Watkins asking the questions. And they've not got me asking the questions, because it'd be very different if I was asking the questions.
Right, you've done it now. You've mentioned his name 3 times. You've mentioned 90, so it was incumbent on me to raise the fact that events are back, baby. Meeting people, never mind those. What's going on in Soho. Caught up with Peter again. Put my flag firmly to the mast. Backing EA Masters again, as we have done for many moons there. And Night, as usual, has mixed it up, and it's now going to be over 6 months, 6 different events, 4 of them digital. 5 of them digital, but a launch event and the main closing event, as ever, at Battersea.
And can I just say, there will be prizes for anybody that makes it to the end of the 6 months. And it's an endurance test, this one.
You're one of those things like in the coffee shop, you get a stamp.
You turn up early in your nice suit. It's to see how that deteriorates over 6 months.
The ink hasn't dried yet on the main speaker. Last year it was Seth Godin. I'm
not going to lie, they have approached me.
Good, as long as they're paying us a fee, I don't care.
We can't agree on the commercials at the moment. There's a rider that I need for all my public paying gigs.
Careful with that phrase, rider. But anyway, the quality is off the scale in terms of what they're planning again there. So I love it. Look at that price as well. The opening ceremony ones obviously are free, so why would you not get involved in that? And then a digital one for the further 5 dates available from 87 quid. You just can't get better value than that, can you really? So again, I would advise everyone to get involved with it. We're going to be doing a number of interviews with Nighty to advise people how to get the very best out of that event as well. And really good and exciting time. But
I think this is an interesting opportunity for them to buy an audience, perhaps as well, that don't travel to the big smoke. This is a great opportunity.
Ever since the days of, they used to do Property Computer Show down in Islington, and they used to occasionally do it up north in Leeds. And what was interesting is that, you know, it never managed to get the numbers. And that's because, you know, obviously, actually, sometimes from Newcastle down to Leeds is as much as a pain in the arse as it is to get from Newcastle down to London. So, but it's a bloody expensive day, especially if you want to get your teams engaged, and it's not just about the principles. So I think it, you know, again, everything's bloody hybrid, isn't it? To have a hybrid event with a digital event as well has to be the way forwards, hasn't it? And I think that's. Yeah,
I think so. I think so.
Takeaway. Everyone talks about the importance of training and development. Well, if you can't do it for 87 quid, you're really just you're starting to just make stuff up, aren't you? Really.
Absolutely. Look, I think it's great value for money, and I think it's much. You're going to get a lot more out of this than you would do normally. And yes, normally it's a jolly, it's a get together. You have a great night out, and possibly a slightly ropey next morning. But actually, this way you're also getting all the value. So you're getting some fantastic training content. You're going to get lots and lots of what Stephen Brown and Luke Sinclair call takeaways and learnings.
Don't mock our friends. It was good to see them back on this morning. Lovely to see
Stephen. Was absolutely lovely to talk to Stephen this week, and I'm glad he's getting back into things. I missed him.
Brilliant. Absolutely, yeah, we have. Everyone's missed him, so that's great to see. But just to talk about you, actually, Spriff, talking about adding more in. They've just launched this new dashboard, and this was one of your first interviews with the amazing Amy over at. Wasn't it? Just give us your overview on this.
So I've had a discussion with Amy. It's on there. The long form interview is there. It's about 46 minutes. It's fun. We cover a lot of stuff that's got nothing to do with property as well. You can find out who plays Amy in the movie of her life, and more importantly, who she chose to play as her girlfriend in this film. So we're shaking things up. We played a good old round of agree or disagree. You can have a look at that. And we got down to business and talking about her experience in the industry. So it's a great interview altogether. But one of
character. Amy's a great character, and I can see Matt who I have a load of time for as well. He's almost written this for me because he's put in a whale catnip there, 100 individual data points for every UK property. You tease, Matt.
I think what is interesting, and I know we're loath to mix one supplier with another, but I also spoke to Sam Hunter from Home Search this week, and I know that Spriff and Home Search.
You're crossing the streams.
Well, I know that Home Search also have got a new dashboard out. So I think the global message to everybody is that at the moment, in terms of accessing data that has been locked away for ages on every single UK property, you've got no excuse for going out to your customers with half-assed information and half-assed answers. When a member of the public asks you, is it leasehold, is it freehold, you now have that at your fingertips. You can tell them how long the lease is. I think this is wonderful, and more importantly, used correctly. Robert May will give me some points for this, but used correctly, you're also fulfilling your obligations to the customer in terms of disclosing key information. It's a legal duty. You cannot hide this stuff anymore.
I need to give a shout out. The stuff we had that demonstration with Robert about what he's doing with Ryder and Dutton, how they're blending the Dataloft data, the Spriff data, Robert's own rummage stuff on there, and that's a fascinating little microsite kind of ability that he's putting up there. There's pretty much unrivaled information on an agent's website, isn't it?
I'll tell you something. In my office, we are extremely skeptical about anything. But and when we looked at Rummage 4, we just sort of shrugged our shoulders and we went, well, it's just another portal. It just does this. But when you look at his showcase function, although it's extremely simple, the fact that it drags in that Spriff data and presents it in a way that the public can see, I'm sorry, but it's the other portals just aren't doing it.
You loved it for the simple visualization of the sailboards, isn't it?
Oh, I love that. I love that. How much it's vanity to see your sailboards plastered over a map and nobody else's. It gives you the false impression that you're the king of whatever area you operate in, and Robert May can do that for you for very little cost.
That's right. Just make sure you know you've only got half an hour on the phone with him, otherwise he will take it.
Robert May is a time lord. You know.
Hang on, wait a minute. Tug your forelock, David.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you. Great.
Welcome.
This information as part of the buying process. Yeah, couldn't disagree. I'm gonna hang on. Let me put this back on now. I'm having a Turkish haircut later on, which isn't a euphemism. There. Yeah, no, he's absolutely right. Absolutely right.
It is fantastic, and I think that whilst the portals are all releasing innovations and different features, they should be releasing integrations with people like Sprift, HomeSearch, whoever it is, to bring key information and facts into the listings easily.
I've invented loads of different phrases that this industry has to thank me for. I've just invented a new one: stagnant tech. Oh no, here, look, and here's Christian. He's just reiterating the one that I've just invented. Yeah, how exciting is it how fast great products are continuing to roll out new features, functionality, data sets, dashboards, and more. Gone are the days of stagnant tech. It really, so sorry, yes, of course, Christian has labelled this. He's absolutely bang on the money, isn't it?
He's so bang on the money. Now is the golden age of innovation within Proptech. 10 years ago, Proptech was a wanky phrase that we used for solutions looking for a problem. Now we have so many solutions out there that are agent-led and that are actually adding value. And I'm just amazed by it.
I told you we listened to some speaker, some investment speaker, who said obviously if you've got Proptech there in your title, the multipliers are particularly generous. So from going from a boring old estate agency CRM software, I went back saying, we've got to rebrand ourselves. We're Proptech. We're the original Proptech. We're the alpha Proptech. Just at the moment, I noticed the exact moment that agents got completely fucked off with the phrase Proptech. Oh God, another Proptech.
Somewhere, at some point, someone will dig out an article that I wrote years ago about how Proptech should just go into a corner and wither because it was really annoying me at the time. But now it's everything is shiny, it's new, but it's functional, man. We're getting functionality. It's amazing.
Now you're part of the problem, or you could be part of the problem and solution, really, couldn't you? There you are.
There you go.
Yeah, Louisa makes a point. She was using Proptech 17 years ago. You certainly were. Loads of people were without even knowing what it was called there. So, yeah, we're taking it back. You're quite right. Quite right, Louisa. Okay, then. What else have we got? Christ, we're going to be doing people's heads in today. Stock shortage is the worst I've seen in 30 years. That's fairly obvious, isn't it?
It is fairly obvious, and all we'll say on that is if you want some tips, some silver bullets on how you can generate stock, head over to our Facebook page. You'll see all the latest bits and pieces there from industry suppliers giving you tips for free.
And you've got more and more of that coming on, haven't you, as well?
You've got more of that coming on later on today. In just a short while, you'll be hearing from Louise Moss of SDL, who is going to tackle the next problem. The next problem is you're going to have vendors turning up at your shop this week, and they're going to want to put their house on the market because they've found something and they need to get it through in time for the stamp duty deadline. One of the options that you absolutely have to make them aware of is auction. It won't conflict with your agency, but it'll give them a fixed beginning, middle, and an end to that transaction that they can rely on. So if they want to get through in time for that deadline and not have to worry about it, maybe that's the way to go.
Well, that's very good timing. So although it's one of Louise's peers as well, this is the story that Rightmove are launching on next week, I think, pushing that modern method of auction as well. Agents are going to have the ability to express. That's just hide Philip's message for a moment. I will come back to that in a minute, Philip. And they've got a commercial relationship. But the key thing you're getting here isn't it, is that look, auction is, as it already is to many, many agents, a viable alternative. It's really starting to seep into the public.
I think we need to get the message across to agents that auction is not a dirty word. An auction doesn't need to mean that you will be underselling a property. It's not bargain basement. An auction doesn't need to mean that an agent is being cut out and that their client's going to think that they've done no work on it. Inevitably, the agent will be doing a great deal of work in partnership with those auction suppliers. They'll still be getting their fee. They'll still be delivering sound advice to the client. I think it's something that we in England we overlook too much. In Australia, when you get an agent out, they say, look, we can either go private treaty route, we can go auction. Here are the pros and the cons.
Do you know the thing I always love about it, though, with any business, though, is it internalises the decision making, doesn't it? You're no longer then faced with, okay, I've got to go with either you or that agent that does that service. You've got them into your wanky phrase again, the ecosystem, and then it's a phrase. It's choosing between the two, isn't it?
And that's it. And if you've got a tie-up with an auction partner, and you don't need to choose the ones that I'll be talking to, there are tons of them out there. All of them will gladly onboard you very quickly this week if you need to. But if you've got a tie-up with an auction partner, they'll give you the info that you need. They'll give you the marketing that you need to get in front of those clients. And it will give another option, another arm to your business. It's something that the time is now to start sort of taking advantage of that.
It's got to be the one, hasn't it? Look, what do you lose most of your lost business without being invited out? It's that one where you've tried to dodge the question, how much do you charge? Because you know you're going to be charging more than the onliners.
Yeah.
With the modern method, and I know it gets some criticism for this when it's not translated properly and there, but there is a way, Mr. Potential Vendor Sir, that you might not actually have to pay anything, and the buyer could pay everything there. Well, that stops that dead, doesn't it? You can then say, let me come out and talk to you about the options.
It works particularly well now where buyers will pay a premium to secure a property because they are turning up to properties on a daily basis and being rejected and turned away. So, your average buyer is going to see sometimes up to 20 houses before they can even get an offer considered on one of them. So this is an extremely frustrating time for people out there. Maybe auction delivers security that both buyers and sellers are looking for. A little bit of transparency along the way doesn't hurt.
And we've got Philip Farrell over here talking about, hi, Philip. One of the challenges for agents now is separating the wheat from the chaff. Absolutely the case, isn't it? There's a number of different solutions out there, not least your own great one there. You've got Mike Nettleton's one as well in terms of handling the lettings leads and everything else. All of these things making the point that we know you're not short of leads. It's how you deal with those and how how you manage the sheer volume that is one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about making sense of the noise. There's an awful lot of noise out there, isn't there? And it's just about focusing on them. You can't beat a time-binding contract. That's true. That's true. It's just, I don't know whether he's referring directly to auction sales.
Have a look at offers. It's a fantastic proposition that's out there, and it's on the website as well. On there, they've got a great deal on with us, and we've got another generic Facebook user there. It's all relative, and now is better than 10 years ago. That means that in 10 years we will end up looking back at this period as one of stagnant tech relative to then. The rate of change in technology, hardware properties, construction properties, and consumer expectations will continue to accelerate. Also, a wider trend we're seeing is convergence. That, for me, is the really exciting part of this. We were talking about it just the other day. It's all of these technologies that are out there at the minute starting to come together that is really, really does offer up a lot. I was asked that ICG one, where do we see the industry in 10 years? And I said, it's going to be just a utopia of everything in your tech stack just working happily together, and and agents just efficiency. They're just doing the dollar productive activities. It's transparency of information. I tell you what's fascinating, not the way the facile way I presented that, but actually there is everything now in the kit bag that does offer that as a realistic future.
Yeah, I think that's a realistic prospect. I think it's definitely more attainable than it was 10 years ago. I'm hoping that this is the summer of Proptech, and that this next year you're still going to see a lot of innovation. Those collaborations between different solutions are amazing. People are learning to play well with others, and I think the fact that you've got
All being forced to.
They're being forced to, yeah, because we all want integration. One of the agents' frustration is that I have to sign in to 27 different services to get my job done. Well, if you can have them all talking to one another, Christian reckons we're on track to do that a lot quicker. He thinks more like 3 years than 10.
Well, it will be if it's your development schedule, less so if it's some of the others.
The I am sold proposition is a great point of difference to add to your listing toolbox. It's definitely, what have you got to lose by having it in your back pocket when you go out to see a vendor?
David, you're exactly right. Exactly. David, it's not all about, we've got to wind up in a minute, but it's not all about the micro. We spend a lot of time obviously looking at the individual news stories, but I've gone out, as you know, I look through the Sunday papers, the weekend papers, I look across, and this story jumped out at me. It's a really important one here, and I think we need to deal with it. The garden gnomes are in short supply. They're sold out everywhere, David. Apparently, and I can't blame this on Brexit. Apparently, that little dodgy bit of the Austin Powers style reversing in the Suez Canal has meant that we're running out of some of the basic things. Some of the basic.
I worry. Do you know who I worry for? Because I've seen he's done his most recent interviews in a garden. It's Chris Watkin. If he stands still too long, somebody will buy him as a garden gnome.
Those little arms. Little
arms.
They are. Right. Okay. What we're going to do, here we are. Just finish off with this last comment then. We've got Peter Ambrose, fantastic conveyancing operation there. Integration done well on the front end. Definitely not on the legal side of things. Very little change apart from onboarding. Thank you for that. What have you got on this week then? Let's leave it there. These wonderful people have got their Sundays to go to. I've got my haircut to do. Obviously, you won't need to look too far.
So this week, order of business, I'm going to be selling some houses. I'm going to be renting some houses. I'm going to be managing some stuff. And I'm going to be talking to some agents this week, finding out about challenges that they've currently got. I'm also talking to suppliers. You'll see a lot of supplier solutions over the next few weeks, just to deal with the acute issues that we're all finding ourselves with because of on a time basis. We need to focus.
Well, this is why I had to get you. This is why you're my Messi, my content consigliere. You know, those elevator pitches that you are getting across, I think are really important because it's only via that you're going to break through all that noise that's out there and get it out to people.
People need to hear. People need to hear these interviews. They're good. They're short. We're going to try and keep them as short as possible.
We do.
and most importantly, they're free. They're free. Spend half an hour watching them and enrich your lives.
Mincy will be demoing an incredible end of tenancy solution. You want to be careful.
I will be. Do you know what? I am booked in with Christian and Carla, and I'm going to take a ride on that. It's something I'm going to learn a little bit more about as well. And what I'm very excited about is that I'm going to be taking, because due to popular demand, I am taking our Agree or Disagree series on the road. I'm going to be going out there talking to people face to face.
Okay, all right. We have spoke about expenses policy, haven't we?
No, this is the beauty of it. All I'm going to do is follow you to pubs, and we're going to ask random people their opinion on property.
We're seeing him, aren't we? Good. Okay, matey, let's finish up there. Great. It was some really interesting stuff. Thanks for all your input as ever. It's never the same without you guys there. And Mincy, I'll catch up with you in the morning.
Yes, I'll see you later. Have a great week, everybody.
Stay safe.